All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Let's talk all things brakes for our old John Deeres. 4010, 4960, everything in between, it's all the same. Let's look at how they work, basic operation, and a couple other tips and tricks while we're on brakes. And then we'll look at some axle work, because you're either going to pull your axles off because they need to be worked on, and then you're going to do brakes while you're there, or while you have it apart for brakes, you're going to check your axles while you're there. And so we'll look at that as well. And so let me spin you around. Boop. There you go. So enhance. Good computer. So here's your housing, your backing disc, and your brake disc. You got your input shaft coming out of the transmission into your planetary. You can see your gear set there. And so obviously the brake disc spins, and then inside the transmission case, you got three little pads. So we're on the right side, so when you touch your right brake, them three pads are brought out hydraulically and push against the disc, pinching it like any other disc brake. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. On later model tractors, if you push on the brake and you notice that it takes a half a second, like you can almost feel the brake pedals filling back to you instead of being an instant positive hit, there's an accumulator down inside the steering column of the cab, and you got to investigate that, because that accumulator might be dead. And so that's why you're taking that extra half a second to fill your brakes up. As far as pulling the wheels off, the left side, just pull the bolts and pull it off. The right side, you have a line that comes across on some tractors back here to here. You got your differential lock valve that bolts. He sits right here on the housing, and there's a couple little lines up there that you get out of the way. And then just slide it off. If you don't have a little gantry, you can use your cherry picker. You can literally set your tire across the cherry picker and use the top of the cherry picker to balance the tire, or you can make a cart like this, except the back would be a lot higher and your wheels would be off the side so it sits lower. And I know what you're thinking. I can already hear it now, like, John, that's really interesting. Hey, thanks so much. But how do I know my brakes are bad? I got you, buddies. I got you. So the first thing you're going to notice, spin you right around, is that your loader is going to chatter. You are not going to notice when you come into the feedlot, you got a bale up front, and you're coming into the feedlot and you step on your brake. You're not going to notice, like, the tractor not stop. On a little tractor like this, it's probably still going to lock them tires up just fine, especially in the wintertime. On a bigger tractor, you might notice a little bit of lacking braking power, but the common symptom you're always going to have is hydraulic chatter. And you're getting hydraulic chatter because we're lacking oil up front. And why are we lacking oil up front? Is because this pad is supposed to have a pad here and a pad here, and another pad almost there. The rivets, they got filed down. The rivets, they're going to end up in the transmission filter there. But all that pad material is going to wrap around the sump screen. Zoom in. Good camera. And so it's going to wrap around that sump screen and block oil from getting through the transmission pump to the main pump. So you drop your oil. You come to this side. On these old tractors, you're going to look for a plug like that, 1/2-inch square drive. On later model tractors, they're going to have a hydraulic pipe here that comes from the clutch valve housing behind the battery box down there. And you pull that pipe out. And then your sump screen is right there, and it might not come out very well. It might be kind of challenging to get out because of all that lining material is kind of, you're trying to force it through the hole, but you get the sump screen out and then get the vacuum in there and a little adapter hose and suck that out and try and clean it the best you can. because that's where all your lining material is going to end up. Now, I know the other question you're going to say is, John, that is super cool, but I have a cab. How do I do this with a cab? I can't do that with a cab on my tractor. I have to pull the cab off. And I'd say you're right, except you're wrong. On a cab tractor, it's fairly simple. You still got, look at the 4430 still looks exactly the same as that. It's just a little bit bigger. All you do, you have to take this nut and strap off. You put a bottle jack on your arms, and there's a bolt here and a bolt in front of it. You take them two bolts out on each side with a bottle jack here, a 2x6 up under your cab floor, and you're only going to lift the cab a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, just so you can sneak these spacers out. And if you put a bottle jack on both sides, it helps keep the cab, because you take both sides off, assuming you're doing both sides. I do both sides at the same time because it's faster for me to make one trip for parts, your gasket, you get brakes and stuff like that. And because we take the drums to the clutch doctor and he re-rivets all that stuff for us. So it's much faster, but if you want to do one side at a time, whatever. But either way, you put a bottle jack here, 2x6 under here, lift the cab up, then you can sneak the axle out, and you're good to go. Now, I told you that we're going to end up here either because of brakes or because of axles. When we're here because of brakes, one thing we look at, there's no oil dripping out here. So that's good. We have an internal seal about right here in the housing, and that's the seal that keeps the transmission oil in the transmission. This big seal out here is just simply to keep all our net wrap and twine from allowing dirt inside. And we have a bearing out here. So if you don't have a grease zerk here and you haven't greased this in a while, now would be a good time to do that. You have another tapered bearing about here. And so it's just like a big wheel bearing setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll it. It's quiet. It's smooth, but it's a little easy. So we might just take one shim out behind this. Take this star plate off and pull this bolt off and see if they've got shims behind here. If they got shims behind here, I'll find the smallest one, take it out, put it back together, and then feel it again. See what it feels like. If there aren't shims behind the carrier, then we're just going to take that bolt to the next notch and again just tighten until we get that feel that we want. There are specs in the book. If you are rebuilding with new bearings, I'd get a tech manual for your tractor and do it the book method so you end up at the right preload on these bearings. But the old timers taught me how to just do it by feel, and knock on wood, so far in my life that has worked very well. So if you take this bolt off, pull this carrier out. I've met some of you in real life, so I would get a hoist, depending on the tractor you got, to hold that carrier, and then put a porta power between the axle housing and the cast, give it a couple pumps, you move this housing that 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, and you got your cherry picker holding this housing, that bearing will be free, slide the axle off, put your new cups in the axle, boom, done. Follow the book to preload your bearings. So kind of quick, pretty simple. Yeah, so I don't know, I hope that helped you guys. I hope you like it, and we'll catch you on the next one.